Good afternoon, everybody. It's currently 3 p.m. on the 30th of December, and I'm here to just talk a little bit about where I think we're headed. Because it seems like everyone is looking to everyone else for the answers, and I think that we are missing the point. So getting into that, hold on, there's a little bit of lint on my screen. Getting into that, I'm going to read some quotes to start off, and then I'm going to explain, why I think we basically need to start carving our own path as a country, which I think is the whole point of the country we live in. It's not just us, but we talk a big game about being free thinkers and doing what we want, but I think that we've missed out on the true purpose or the true direction that freedom can take us, that liberty can take us. I was trying to find this one specific quote, and it was from one of the U.S.'s acknowledged founders. I know there's many more from many other cultures who we should acknowledge as well, and I'm going to talk about them too here, as a matter of fact. Bear with me. I'm going to leave this video unedited for the most part, I believe. Yeah. Anyway, so let me start with some quotes from Frederick Douglass. He who would be free must himself strike the blow. Now, there is a story behind this, and it's in this, historical article. I'll read it to you. One hot August day. Oh, wait, let me back up. I'm going to read from this article, and I'm going to make some links in my description in the video if you want to read these yourselves. But I'm going to read from this article. The most famous episode in that story is Douglas's fight with Edward Covey. Covey ran a business breaking slaves who were too headstrong, and Douglas's master sent him to Covey in 1834 when Douglas was 17. Covey beat him every week for any reason or for no reason. He would hide in the bushes and attack Douglas out of nowhere, all to instill in Douglas a sense of helpless terror and to destroy his capacity to dream of a better life. Douglas tells us that before being sent to Covey, he would sometimes gaze out at the ships in Chesapeake Bay and dream of being on one, sailing freely before the wind. But after 6 months of Covey's brutal abuse, I'm just going to call it abuse, regimen. That's what the article says. But after Covey's brutal regimen for months, after 6 months, Douglas lost even the desire to imagine his freedom. Covey succeeded in breaking me, he said, In body, mind, soul, and spirit, my natural elasticity was crushed. My intellect languished. The disposition to read departed. The cheerful spark that lingered about my eye died out. The dark night of slavery closed in upon me, and behold, a man transformed to a brute. Then, one hot August day, Douglas decided that he would not surrender. He had fainted from heat stroke that day, and Covey had beat him for it with a wooden club. Though Douglas had begged his owner to intervene, he had refused. So Douglas resolved to fight back. The next time Covey attacked him, he grabbed the man around the throat and held on. They struggled until Covey stumbled off, mumbling. He never beat Douglas again. By the way, have you ever noticed that when you stand up to bullies, some retaliate, but it usually ends up only being bluster, and it goes away. I also remember in my catechism studies as a kid that we were taught that the devil gets very loud and very angry, and tries to scare you into submission before completely disappearing once you choose not to submit. That archetype is very prevalent to me. But back into this article. And Douglas learned from this incident a crucial principle. He who would be free must himself strike the blow. Striking that blow rather than surrendering, believing in himself enough to stand up, that was the crucial lesson. Douglas refused to accept the hopeless, helpless, dreamless life of a brute. Next to the dignity of being a free man is the dignity of striving to be free. There's dignity in that. Let me say it again, though. Next to the dignity of being a free man is the dignity of striving to be free, he said years later. I detest the slaveholder, and almost equally detest a contented slave. They are both enemies to freedom. One of the saddest facts connected with organized and settled oppression is that it deadens the sensibility in its victims. It acts upon the oppressed like certain deadly poisons upon animal life, which lull to sleep before dissolving the body in death. I tell this story because I want to focus on the lessons Douglas teaches us today as liberated people and as Americans. It says libertarians, but I'm not sure if they're referring to the political party. About idealism and cynicism, about pride and surrender, about the American dream, about that deadly poison that lulls to sleep, a hopeless, helpless, dreamless sleep. So, seeking out these quotes, we're discussing how freedom is a process and not an outcome. Let me read some more quotes. Here, hold on. The earth does not belong to man. Man belongs to the earth. All things are connected like the blood that unites us all. Man did not weave the web of life. He is merely a strand in it. Whatever he does to the web, he does to himself. Chief Seattle. That's also relevant because we have to have awareness of everything that goes beyond ourselves and our immediate point of view. Things that go beyond even the human perspective. A sense of awareness and care of the world around us. I'm moving slowly, pardon me. One quote that I love from Irene Bedard, who is a great Indigenous actor, an Indigenous woman, American actor. If you listen hard, everything has something to say. You can gain, and the way I interpret that is the way that you can gain wisdom from just about anything, even if the source is either not aligned with what you believe or even harmful. There is wisdom in everything. Love won't be tampered with. Love won't go away. Push it to one side and it creeps to the other. Oh goodness, where did it go? Louise. Oh goodness, I can't read the last name. Here's another one from another lovely Indigenous American woman, civil rights leader, I believe. When I am gone, always be reminded that whenever you stand for your truth, you will be keeping my voice and the voices of our nations and our people alive. I remain Sachin Little Feather. Thank you. So, there's that part, and then another good quote from Denzel Washington is, don't aspire to make a living, aspire to make a difference. And that in itself, to me, requires a great deal of courage and self-sacrifice, knowing that it extends beyond you. I also can't help but think about that scene at the end of the first Doctor Strange movie, where it was almost at the end, but the part where the Ancient One is getting ready to pass on and has that conversation with Doctor Strange over his fear and his apprehension over stepping into his true role, his leadership role, and he says, I'm not ready. And it ultimately comes to her turning to him and saying, it's not about you. All of these fears, and I'm not quoting, by the way, I'm paraphrasing, but all these fears that he had, it goes beyond your fear. The role you step into and the sacrifice that you make as a real leader, someone who inspires others to awaken their own leader in themselves, to go beyond what you can see that's comfortable. That's what we all need to do in this moment. I'm reading these quotes because I'll have a point to them all at the end. There is no better than adversity. I wonder if that's a typo. There is no better than adversity. Every defeat, every heartbreak, every loss contains its own seed, its own lesson on how to improve your performance the next time. Malcolm X. If you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward. The time is always right to do what is right. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave, I am the dream and the hope of the slave. I rise, I rise, I rise. Maya Angelou. Another one. Impossible is just a big word thrown around by small men who find it easier to live in the world they've been given than to explore the power they have to change it. Impossible is not a fact, it's an opinion. It's also why I don't believe in miracles. I also believe that we just haven't crossed that certain new boundary yet. But impossible is not a fact, it's an opinion. Impossible is not a declaration, it's a dare. Impossible is potential. Impossible is temporary. Impossible is nothing. Muhammad Ali, professional boxer. I love that one because it sounds so defiant of the norms and the idea that anyone else is setting the standard. We all have dreams. In order to make dreams come into reality, it takes an awful lot of determination, dedication, self-discipline, and effort. Jesse Owens. Success isn't about how much money you make, it's about the difference you make in people's lives. Michelle Obama, former First Lady. If you have no critics, you'll likely have no success. Malcolm X. So, there's that's one part, and then I'm going to read some quotes from the Founding Fathers, that the acknowledged Founding Fathers. And I love all of these quotes. I'm glad that I'm able to share them here on my channel today. So for Patrick Henry from 1736 to 1799, the Constitution is not an instrument for the government to restrain the people. It is an instrument for the people to restrain the government, lest it come to dominate our lives and interests. He's also the person who said, give me liberty or give me death. Without virtue, there can be no political liberty. It should be your care, therefore, and mine, to elevate the minds of our children and exalt their courage, to accelerate and animate their industry and activity, to excite them in habitual contempt of meanness, abhorrence of injustice and inhumanity, and an ambition to excel in every capacity, faculty, and virtue. If we suffer their minds to grovel and creep in infancy, they will grovel all their lives. John Adams. If virtue and knowledge are diffused among the people, they will never be enslaved. This will be their great security. A diffusion of knowledge is the only guardian of true liberty. James Madison. It is favorable to liberty. Freedom can exist only in a society of knowledge. Without learning, men are incapable of knowing their rights, and where learning is confined to a few people, liberty can be neither equal nor universal. Benjamin Rush. Enlighten the people generally, and tyranny and oppressions of body and mind will vanish like evil spirits at the dawn of the day. Thomas Jefferson. Illuminate as far as practicable the minds of the people at large, and more especially to give them knowledge of those facts which history exhibiteth, that, possessed thereby of the experience of other ages and countries, they may be enabled to know ambition under all its shapes, and prompt to exert their natural powers to defeat its purposes. Now, the way that also lands with me, that's Thomas Jefferson, by the way, the way all of that lands with me is that, as well as knowing the opposition, the enemy, and its evils, the obstacles being thrown in our path, we must know ourselves and our own power. And in order to do that, you must grow your mind and see the world for what it really is, instead of letting yourself sink into the dark ages. Can the liberties of a nation be sure when we remove the only firm basis, a conviction in the minds of people that these liberties are a gift from God? Now, my personal interpretation of that statement is, when they mention God, they're mentioning something inherent, the greater self. And they're mentioning that these gifts are inherent in you and are present as part of your own natural great self, your own power. America will never be destroyed from the outside. Oh wait, who said that? Thomas Jefferson said that. Okay. America will never be destroyed from the outside. If we falter and lose our freedoms, it will be because we destroyed ourselves. That's Abraham Lincoln. And this is also Abraham Lincoln. Those who deny freedom to others deserve it not for themselves. Freedom is the last best hope of earth. So, the point I'm trying to make here, and if I can find the other quote where they talk about the growth of mind, I will mention that too. Actually, let me read one more. And I couldn't find the direct source of this quote. But I do know that George Washington warned against the baneful effects of the spirit of party, fearing it would divide the nation. That's what happened. That's what's happening now. We're working through that. Thomas. So the one thing that I'm noticing is that a lot of the founders and a lot of the great minds who I've quoted, especially Frederick Douglass and people who suffered under the oppression of the U.S., they in particular understand the possibility of change even in the face of hopelessness. Right? And here, let's see. Figures, and this is search results when I asked, what did the founding fathers have to say about evolution and growth of America? Benjamin Franklin stressed the need to keep the republic, meaning citizens must actively guard against pure democracy's pitfalls, because there was a distinction between democracy and liberty, which unfortunately gets misconstrued and twisted around. We also have to be careful about that too, because the manipulation of the truth and manipulation to serve an end that hurts more people is common nowadays, especially. So we have to understand that I get the impression that during the time we are currently living in, everyone seems to think that freedom is static and it's an outcome. And that's kind of true, but we're missing a big piece here. I almost wonder if it's because we were raised to be too engaged with the idea of a happily ever after, where the camera at the end of the movie goes black and it's the end of the story and it was tied up in a neat little bow. And I know that everyone talks about the trope people want that trope to be true in romantic relationships, but I also think that the concept of happily ever after extends to other areas of our lives, and it's toxic because we get this idea that if we put enough work in, or we get if we put enough work in, that eventually there will be a point where we just don't have to work anymore and we can disengage and just let it be happy and perfect. But for anyone who is familiar with real life, we all know that's not true. And I said it in my short that I just posted. We all know that's not true. We all know that anything good in life largely requires effort and constant investment, cultivation, and engagement. And we need to disavow ourselves of that conditioning that one day we won't have to work for freedom anymore. And we can't hand the power to anyone else. I almost wonder if there is a faction of the voting base that thought, oh yeah, no, we can trust one guy to do it all for us and we'll still have all of our rights and our freedom. And so they bent toward authoritarianism, thinking, oh, that's a good idea. The propaganda sounds great. They didn't realize it was propaganda in large part, but or they did, I don't know. Anyway, I'm just saying it's not an outcome, it's a process. Freedom is a process. Breaking poisonous cycles is a process. There isn't some point where it's magically going to evaporate and be perfect. There isn't one point where you magically morph into a happy, well-adjusted person, like the Beast turned into the prince at the end of Beauty and the Beast. We need to let go of that idea, because I think it's sunken into our psychology so much that we're waiting too much. We keep hoping. I don't know if it's, I could be speaking for a great number of people in our country, or maybe this is just a small part. Who knows? I think that we are waiting too much on other people to tell us it's the right time, or get confirmation that it's the right time, and it's clearly not. It's clearly not ever going to be the right time. You decide it's going to be the right time. And that goes for everything on a personal level. Like for me, for example, I want to, shape myself into, I have like certain goals, right? It's never going to be the right time. And anyone who's achieved a great goal or a big goal knows that. They know that it's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be the right time. It gets to be better because you chose to invest in it and allow that change to happen gradually over time. And just like, and I think I said this in some words some months ago on my channel, but we are never going to get to a place where things are better unless we actually step forward and do what is necessary, do the work that's necessary in order to help this country become a better place. And it takes continual investment and forward thinking, as in generations down the road. What are we leaving behind for future generations? I look at my younger siblings, especially the really younger, the much younger ones who are in like Gen Z age range, and my best friend who's Gen Z, because I'm an older millennial, she's Gen Z. I look at them and I go, I can't give up. I don't believe. I personally have a lot of feelings around thinking in a doomeristic way, because it really is up to us. When we think, oh, it's over, America's done, are you saying that because you want it to be done? Or are you choosing to opt out of doing the work necessary to ensure that us and future generations have something good to leave behind? Because we all have that work to do. We can't just tune out. I actually think that the vast majority of people that doomer their way through all this, first of all, I'm sure you are struggling with something mentally, and that's perfectly justified, right? I know I am. I have my own struggles. But they're also angry about losing the temporary privilege of not having to care and things still being okay. I've never had that in my life personally, at least not for very long. I've always had to stay engaged to make sure that I have progress in my life, that I get away from the darkness, so to speak. And I think that a lot of us need to let go of the idea that we can stay disengaged and that it will magically get better or go away one day. just remember, freedom is a process, not an outcome. Liberty is a freedom, or liberty is a process. Liberty is a process. It continually gets better. And if you will lose it. You will lose it once you stop engaging with it or investing in it. So let go of the cultural conditioning that said, oh yeah, everything's fine, you don't have to pay attention. No. And as a matter of fact, I think a lot of the people who are opting out of normal societal expectations, like getting married and having kids, I think, aside from the fact that, yes, everything feels very unstable and uncertain, and there's issues with the economy, and there are things that could destroy the country and affect the world in a big way, they know, at least some of them, I believe, know that our purpose in this generation, at least in mine, and the coming next couple of generations, is to kind of help us steer the course back. To steer the course back where we were supposed to be heading, in the best direction. Almost like the builder generation. And all the brave souls that are going to step forward and do that will set the example. And I believe that true leaders are ordinary people who decided not only that they were good enough for the moment, but they didn't even consider that. They just stepped forward and said, well, I don't want to do this, but I'm going to. And if I may use an allegory, a biblical allegory, I remember in the story of Moses, and almost every story I noticed in the Bible, whenever a leader is called forward, they're like, I don't want to do this. Why me, Lord? Why me? It never comes at a time when it's convenient or beneficial. And I think that is what despots and dictators and power-hungry people always get wrong. And it's why it fails, because true leadership comes and you make the choice to step forward when it does not benefit you, and it's going to be hard, and it's likely going to take away everything from you that you once knew. I'm not saying horrible bad things are going to happen. You'll have to abandon a lot of things that you thought before, and you'll have to take a lot of actions you're not comfortable with, but it's because it will benefit everyone, including yourself. And it takes sacrifice. And unfortunately, that concept gets propagandized a lot to manipulate people into doing, to force and manipulate people. That idea gets twisted around a lot nowadays. But the point I'm trying to make is that we do the work. We do not disengage. Stay alert, stay awake, stay focused. And understand that the more we invest in our liberty as a country, the better things get. It's something that continually gets better. And initially, you're going to see a lot of regression and being punched backward 10 steps. But once you actually figure out that problem, it can shove you forward 20 steps. Yes, it feels like we've lost our way, and we have. But the way we get back on track is to take that step. Even if it's in small ways. Just understand that you are capable of so much more than you think you are. And I'm saying that to you and to myself, to everyone here who will listen. all 13 people. Maybe more, who knows. Just keep it in mind, okay? And keep the quotes in mind. I encourage you to research more being said about that and about the change that naturally occurs in our country. I think a lot of people seem to forget that all these thought leaders understood the importance of embracing change and adaptability for the better, educating the self, growing the mind. They understood these things. And yes, they were horrible people, but I'm still gaining wisdom. Not all of them, but like a good number of these founding fathers of our country were bad. They did bad things. But they also had wisdom to offer, and I'm going to take that wisdom and also uplift the other great civil rights and thought leaders and influential people who have something great to offer and to teach us. And I just thought I'd share that so that it can drive the point home. So it can drive the point home that we are not going to be handed this, that it's not going to be easy for us to get. I think that it gets easier over time, depending on how much work we put in investing in our liberty in this country or around the world, how much we care about others and investing in them too, whether they're here in our borders or across the world. It's just no one else is doing that for us, and we need to remember that we like to be initiative takers, and it's built into our mass psychology as Americans. We need to access that greater part of ourselves. So I'm going to leave it here for now. If I think of anything else, I'll share it. And if you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much. Sorry for the slow pacing. It's just, I like to be slow and thoughtful at this particular time. But yeah, thank you for being here. And have a great, God, I forgot what day it was. Have a great Tuesday, or whatever day you're seeing this. Okay, bye.